It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a coroner's warning over the dangers of predatory illegal gambling sites. It follows the death of Oliver Long, who had voluntarily banned himself from the UK's legal betting firms, but was then targeted by illicit overseas sites. And his family says the authorities must do more to stop them.
I think it's important that they acknowledge the scale of the issue and the fact that there is so much being done by these illegal operators to actively target the most vulnerable groups.
Also tonight, growing pressure on the bosses of South East Water. They've been recalled to Parliament by MPs, not satisfied with what they told them just last week. And with thousands of customers still without water tonight, the firm could now face action from the industry's regulator. Plus, we join an immigration raid targeting illegal workers as the Home Office launches a new strategy to smash the trafficking gangs. And the BBC sets out its position as it seeks to have Donald Trump's multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit dismissed. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, we start tonight's programme with the growing international pressure on the Iranian regime amid claims that at least 2,000 people have died in anti-government protests in the country. World leaders are watching and waiting to see what Donald Trump will do and if he is serious about military intervention. This is after he sent a message to protesters today telling them help is on the way. Well, this was the scene in Westminster a little earlier this evening as the Iranian ambassador was summoned to the Foreign Office. Yvette Cooper telling the Commons this afternoon that she is planning further sanctions against Tehran, accusing the country's leader of presiding over a desperate regime.
Today, as the further reports have come through, the Minister for the Middle East, at my instruction, has summoned the Iranian ambassador to underline the gravity of this moment and to call Iran to answer for the horrific reports that we are hearing. But this latest conduct by the Iranian regime is no aberration. It is no outlier. Rather, it is all too in keeping with the fundamental nature and track record of this regime.
And from the United States President, a very clear message to the protesters in Iran. Donald Trump telling them on Truth Social, keep protesting, take over your institutions, and help is on its way. Trump speaking more about Iran in Detroit a little earlier this evening. He had this message for those he described as Iranian patriots.
Keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. You're being very badly abused. If the numbers are right, now I hear 5 different sets of numbers. I hear numbers, look, 1 death is too much. But I hear much lower numbers, and then I hear much higher numbers. But I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. And I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran. Just went into effect today. And I say, make Iran great again. You know, it was a great country until these monsters came in and took it over.
Yeah, make Iran great again is how he signed off his post on Truth Social. James, we're at an interesting point, aren't we? Our US correspondent James Matthews has been following events for us this evening. Donald Trump speaking there in Detroit as to trying to figure out what Donald Trump's next move is, saying help is on its way. Implies potential action from the United States, but the big question is what?
Well, exactly, yeah. A question he was asked, actually, as he toured Detroit's Ford plant. His answer to that was, you're going to have to figure that one out. He duly gave this hour-long speech, Sarah-Jane, and we were listening for clues as to what he meant. We were told the speech had been rewritten to include Iranian content. It was an economic speech, but you heard him there essentially repeating almost verbatim that Truth Social post with this key phrase at the heart of it, help is on its way. Now, my take on that is that he certainly sharpened the diplomacy. It doesn't necessarily mean that there will be military action imminently. There are options available to Trump short of a military strike. Remember, of course, he did strike Iran its nuclear facilities in the past few months. But there are other options on the table before him: an increase in economic sanctions, cyber attacks, for example, that would stop short of the kind of complications that might be faced by a president wading in to Iran. A very tricky one for Donald Trump. He said in that speech, "I like flawless," and he was referring to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, which of course was a flawless military operation. Iran, a different set of circumstances, different set of potential problems in terms of the impact, not just in that country, but also in that surrounding region in terms of stability and the kind of diplomatic consent that he will need to seek, surely, with the likes of Saudi Arabia and others before he launches some kind of action. There is the question, of course, of trust on the ground in Iran. You know, being given this instruction by a US president who, they will be asking the question, Iranians who are protesting, okay, fine, you say take over your institutions, you're telling us to take your instructions. They will want to know what happens in the longer term. Okay, American strikes, okay, immediate action in the short term, but where will Donald Trump be when they do take over institutions, if that's what they do? Is he a US president that has their interests at heart in the longer term, or is he a US president who actually is high on the success in Venezuela and sees the advantage for himself in launching a military strike fleetingly, a drive-by attack on Iran, which is good for him politically, good for him domestically, but not necessarily in the long-term interests of the Iranian people, who will see him, of course, having worked out a strategy with Israel. There have been discussions between Israel and the United States about a way forward on this. That doesn't necessarily bind protesting Iranians into any kind of arrangement of trust or any kind of belief in the way forward being presented by Donald Trump. So it's a complicated issue, complicated for Donald Trump to get this right. He did not attend a meeting of national security officials this morning, Sarah-Jane. He is due to, after he's finished with the business in Detroit. That may take place on Air Force One on the way back, or indeed at the White House this evening. There will be options on the table. What these are, when they might be enacted, that remains the unanswered question at this stage.
James, thank you. James Matthews across events for us from Washington tonight. A coroner has ordered authorities to re-examine restrictions around unlicensed gambling websites amid claims that they are actively targeting addicts who have removed themselves from the established betting sites. Unlicensed gambling companies are making more than £500 million from UK gamblers every year, and critics say that the government and the Gambling Commission need to do more to block them. 36-year-old Oliver Long, who had been diagnosed with a severe gambling addiction, took his own life in 2024. It's believed he had signed up to GamStop, the scheme that allows customers to ban themselves from all forms of legal and licensed online betting and gaming. But it's thought he then began using overseas unlicensed sites which target people like him. Oliver's sister Chloe told us that more action has to be taken.
It was very clear the impact that gambling had on Ollie and the fact that gambling with illegal operators led to Ollie's death. We are disappointed that the coroner didn't include gambling disorder in the medical cause of death. However, we're going to draw on the positives and use this to continue to raise awareness in my brother's name. Ollie was such a kind, generous, loving person. We have a really, really close family. He adored his nephews, his 5 young nephews, and he was just great fun to be around. He was always the life and soul of the party. He was so funny. He was a great DJ. He loved his music, and we just miss him so much. It's just such a hole in our family not having him anymore. Ollie's experience was horrendous because he was trying his absolute best to try and help himself. He recognised that he was experiencing significant harm from gambling, and he wanted to help himself by self-excluding. And unfortunately, he was targeted by these illicit, illegal black market sites. And I just am so concerned of the risk that poses to other people, and we just don't want anybody else to go through what we've been through. We don't want anybody else in Ollie's position, when they're trying so desperately to help themselves, to become victim to these illegal sites. And I think significant change is needed to ensure that the issue is dealt with appropriately and that the scale of this issue is reduced. And we have serious concerns that the Gambling Commission is not doing an adequate job at present. I think it's important that they acknowledge the scale of the issue and the fact that there is so much being done by these illegal operators to actively target the most vulnerable groups, so those who have self-excluded or underage children. So I think what I would say to them is that they need to do significantly more in terms of having a more impactful strategy for enforcement. And I think the legislation is significantly outdated and needs to be reviewed. The legislation for gambling predates the smartphone era, and I think the way that gambling exists now is just inadequate. So I think they need to treat it seriously, and I think they need to do that extremely quickly to prevent others dying in the way that Ollie did.
Well, our correspondent Molly Malone is here and has been following this story for us today. Molly, Oliver, such a tragic case, but an example of how gambling addiction is being targeted by these illegal sites. They're illegal, so you think you wouldn't be able to find them online. But as you found out today, it's really, really easy to find them.
Yeah, it's like there's a whole new world out there, really, because you hear so often about how the gambling industry is regulated, but actually there's a dark kind of world there, which Ollie experienced. He was described in court as intelligent, quick-witted and endlessly kind, but his sister talked in a pen portrait read out at the coroner's court today about this hidden battle that he faced with gambling, which his sister said quietly eroded his ability to find happiness. And she called the illegal gambling sites predatory systems designed to exploit. I'm just going to explain a bit about what she kind of means there. Ollie, it's thought, had taken steps to sort of self-exclude himself from regulated gambling sites. You can basically sign up to websites, GamStop, GamBan, and for any time between 6 months and 5 years, you can prevent yourself from having access to these websites. But there's ways, a kind of loophole, there's ways of circumnavigating it. I actually, as you say, had a look myself today. You can Google things like not on GamStop, and people can find ways and websites that are illegal, unregulated,
well, even
and provided.
Even if you type in GamStop, my team was looking at it today, you don't even have to type in the full name, just GamStop, which is meant to prevent it, and it comes up anyway.
There's a whole host of websites that you can then go onto, and they're provided by illegal offshore providers. And YieldSec, who I think you're going to speak to in a moment, they're a gambling data analytics company, and they say that around 84% of illegal gambling content in Britain stems from not on GamStop, which is driving this increase in legal gambling. And takings from UK users was at around 122 million in 2022 to 583 million in the last year. So that gives you a sense of the scale and the numbers of people that are accessing these illegal sites. The coroner today ruled that Oliver died by suicide. She issued what's known as a prevention of future death reports. It's basically the way that the coroner says to authorities, different government departments, you need to look at this. And her view was that during her investigation, she said that people actually weren't aware of the fact that they were being moved out of the protection of regulated areas and moving into this unlicensed kind of space. So she said to the Department of Health, the Department of Culture and the Department of Education, you need to look at this because clearly there's not enough being done. The hope clearly for Ollie's family is that the action from the coroner and her addressing these government departments will bring in change. There is some hope in that there's new legislation giving the Gambling Commission, which is the body that regulates licensed providers, new powers to require internet providers to clamp down on these illegal sites. That's due to come in later in the year, but clearly for Ollie's family and many others, it can't come soon enough.
Yeah, his sister Chloe saying that Ollie wasn't vulnerable, he was human, his death was preventable. Gambling is not harmless entertainment, it is a public health crisis, and that's very much the message they want to get across. Molly, thank you. Molly Malone covering that story for us. As Molly said, we're now going to speak to the founder of the data analytics firm, YieldSec, Ishmael Valley, the firm that's been looking at the traffic to these unlicensed sites. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme tonight. Just hearing about Oliver's story sort of puts it into perspective, just how easy it is to access these gambling sites, for these gambling sites to seek you out, even when you're trying to avoid them.
Thank you.
Ishmael, I'm just going to stop you there because we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Let me just see if our team behind the scenes can sort out your microphone. We're just not able to hear you. I'll just ask you that question again. Actually, let me just bring you a statement that we have from the... this is from the Gambling Commission, and we've been in touch with the Gambling Commission, obviously, today about this story. We put the concerns of Oliver's family and YieldSec to the Gambling Commission, and a spokesperson said, since April 2024, our illegal markets team has issued more than 3,100 cease and desist and disruption notices, referred nearly 450,000 illegal URLs to search engines, and achieved almost 290,000 removals. Tackling unlicensed gambling requires a joined-up approach between the Commission, other domestic and international regulators, GamStop, licensed operators, technology platforms, financial sectors and enforcement bodies. And we will continue to strengthen that collaboration to better protect consumers. In addition, the government's crime and policing bill will grant the Commission greater powers to act to block IP addresses and domain names linked to illegal websites. That is the statement from the Gambling Commission this evening in reaction to our story tonight. And remember, if you've been affected by anything you've heard over the course of that report, you can contact the Samaritans at any time. 116123 is their number, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. We are going to try and get Ismail Valley from YieldSec back after a short break. Also coming up in the programme tonight, we'll have the latest for you, as around 25,000 properties in Kent and Sussex are still without water. We'll have the latest.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Roger and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Well, let's return to our story about unlicensed illegal gambling sites targeting gambling addicts here in the UK. Let's try once more to speak to Ismail Valley, founder of data analytics firm YieldSec, which has been looking at the traffic to these unlicensed sites. Isma, thanks for bearing with us and those sound issues there. I just wanted you to sort of talk to us about your firm's findings that, you know, if you are a gambling addict and you're doing the best you can to protect yourself from that world, you can find these sites quite easily, but they also seek you out.
Sarah-Jane, thank you. The biggest problem we have with illegal gambling in the UK is this has been growing for years. So we started talking about illegal gambling in Great Britain in 2020. We set up YieldSec, which is basically a firm that looks at all of the audience, all their activity, all of the time. We found that illegal gambling has grown from just a tiny share of the UK marketplace of just under 0.5% in 2020. It's now knocking on the door of 10% on our data from last year. The growth from that has been from two audiences in Great Britain. It's been from children and from self-excludes. And when you look at that marketplace, if I'm looking at the audience, which is everything that YieldSec and Gaming Compliance International, a firm that bought us recently, looks at, we found that the offshore gambling was targeting the United Kingdom because it wants a share of what is the most lucrative online gambling marketplace on the planet. It had no share of that 5 years ago. And during the pandemic, it came looking for that audience. Looking at a scheme like GamStop, a self-exclusion scheme for self-admitted problem gamblers, that's like a gaming reservation to these guys where they can basically look at and say, they are the most valuable customers who have a self-admitted problem. Let's go looking for that audience. And they found them through the scheme name, GamStop. So they didn't need to crack or hack any database here. They just went looking for the itch that those customers could not help but scratch at some point. So this was definitely crime coming looking for the share of a lucrative marketplace, Great Britain's, and it found the most vulnerable community there and went looking for them. If you're going to have a scheme like GamStop, you need to protect that scheme and you need to protect its credibility and what you've told people. You've told people who join a scheme like GamStop that they are going to be safe. That's not sincere if you don't monitor, police, enforce, and optimize your online marketplace.
Can I just pick up on something you just said there, which actually shocked me about the UK being the world's biggest marketplace for online gambling? Does the UK have a gambling problem?
I wouldn't say the UK has a gambling problem. This is a product that people demand and desire, and it's a lucrative developed nation, okay? So there is money there, and it's the oldest regulated gambling marketplace on the planet. So we got to this early. The problem is, as Chloe Long said today at the inquest, she made it very clear that maybe the law needs to change here, that the regulation and law we have around online gambling in the United Kingdom, it's going back to the 2005 Gambling Act. And we had a series of the conservative Tory government looking at this and saying, we're going to change it, we're going to reform the law. This is a pre-smartphone law, as Chloe Long said. There probably needs to be a looking at this area where you say, okay, we're going to upgrade our regulation, upgrade our law to deal with all the changes that have come. And just let's remember here, the gamification of everything happened during the pandemic. So consumer behavior has been completely rewired when gaming became one of the main forms of activity during the pandemic because there was very little to do. Sports betting changed and people moved to playing on slot machines and casino games. That really changed consumer behavior globally from everything that YieldSec looks at. And that's something that needs to be looked at in every marketplace, including Great Britain's.
Yeah, so new, more robust, up-to-date legislation. I mean, you know, I just read out a statement from the Gambling Commission there. Legal gambling in this country, they're saying, you know, they've got a hold of it, it's well regulated, you know. It has permeated the fabric of the UK. If you look around, references to gambling are everywhere, particularly as you referenced there in sport. But they say that, you know, that is well looked after. But it's this illegal market. How does the UK, with legislation, tackle that? Because these are sites abroad.
Absolutely. Sarah-Jane, one thing that's I'll point out here, not to correct you, not to say that you're wrong, we often refer to it as the illegal market. There is one marketplace, the Great British Marketplace for online betting and gaming. Crime came looking for a share of that one marketplace, and they found it. Consumers have no idea how to differentiate between stuff, and it's hard for any regulator anywhere to be able to say, how do we get people to stop clicking on these links, to stop looking for things that are potentially dangerous or harmful for them? And the issue here is it's in the ecosystem. If I can find it on Instagram, if I can find it on TikTok, what is stopping me from clicking those things and then ending up with stuff that is illegal, illicit, and harmful? The point here is the Gambling Commission released a statement today at the inquest saying that we take away 81,000 pieces of content, websites, etc. Now, not all of those are operators, just to be clear. It's much closer to content types. So all of the advertising, all of the influencer promotion, all of the reviews and affiliate websites that are telling me these sites are great for me. These sites will give me a great bonus. These sites are crypto gambling. These sites are predictor betting. All these new forms of gambling that are very badly covered by legislation everywhere, including in the UK. So if I can find it online, I can do damage with it to myself is the problem here. Consumers have no means of differentiating what's legal, what's illegal. Just because it has a Gambling Commission logo, a UK flag at the bottom of the website page, doesn't mean it's legal, doesn't mean it's even real. A lot of the illegal gambling we find are scam websites that will just take your money and then you can't even place bets with them or play any games there. So the point here is there needs to be much more up-to-date legislation and regulation. There needs to be a much better understanding by consumers generally that this stuff is potentially needs to be looked at and could be harmful for you. There also needs to be a piece here of acceptance of without monitoring, policing, enforcement and optimization by all government agencies and all legal stakeholders working together, including legal operators, including the Gambling Commission, including GamStop, work together to remove what's out there and remove the content, not just the illegal offshore websites, but everything in the supply chain behind them. And that's where my firm works internationally. We've been able to impact that by working through the supply chain to remove what causes this, because somebody supplies these illegal websites with the games they have, with the odds they have, with the payment provision they have. Get rid of all of those elements in the supply chain and you get rid of the illegal gambling.
Yeah, so much work to be done. Ismail Valley, YieldSec founder, thank you so much. An alarming insight into what is happening online and, as ever, what's happening online running faster than legislation and regulation can keep up. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Right, let's talk about pressure, more of it, on the bosses of South East Water tonight. They have been recalled to Parliament to answer more questions from MPs. They were only there a couple of weeks ago. That's because thousands of people still without water tonight. It's the second outage for some in as many months. Well, now the water regulator says it is reviewing all the evidence to decide whether the company has met its legal obligations to its customers. As of this morning, there were still around 25,000 properties in Kent and Sussex affected. South East Water saying supplies should be back to normal by tomorrow. But the MP for Tunbridge Wells, Mike Martin, says the company's leadership has to go.
South East Water is the worst performing water company in the country. Conversations I have with the chair of the select committee, the Secretary of State, everyone, the company is totally failing and it's the worst company in the world. Everybody is saying that they've never seen a situation like this with so many rolling issues. Clearly the leadership's got to change. There's a massive degree of groupthink. They're over-optimistic, they don't assess risk properly, so you've got to get a fresh pair of eyes in. But beyond that, I think we need to look at, for Tunbridge Wells at least, a proper resilience plan, and I'm pulling that together at the moment with experts, and I'll be presenting that to South East Water and saying, if it's not this that's going to fix Tunbridge Wells, what is it? And let's just get on with it and do it.
Well, our correspondent Amelia Harper joins me now. Amelia, you went in search of answers today because South East Water are not coming to us, so we decided to go to them to visit their HQ. We sent you along to try and speak to the company's managers. Did you have any luck?
The long and the short of it, no. We obviously went to try to hold sort of senior management to account, to ask them what was going on and what happens next from here. What happened, I went in there to say, we have approached you a number of times over the last 36 hours to ask for an interview. You have told us that you're only speaking to local media outlets. Why is that? And the long and the short of it, we were essentially told, you can't just walk in here and ask for an interview, and we were asked to leave. But I suppose good news for locals around Kent and Surrey. Senior management for South East Water have been recalled to Parliament for a second time. So the Chief Executive, David Hinton, is going to be answering questions from MPs again. Alistair Carmichael, who is the chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, has taken what they're calling this unprecedented step to ask him to come back because he was there a few days ago answering questions. He says he's deeply sceptical about the company's version of events, the timeline of events. South East Water has said they're fully complying with any of these requests to answer questions, and they will conduct an in-depth rapid review with a deadline of April. But for people that are living there, they're dealing with this now. And we spoke earlier to a Tunbridge Wells resident, Justine Lewis, who told us just how bleak things are.
We've got no water supply to our house, and it's across the entire area. Schools have been affected, hospitals have been affected, businesses have been affected. It's been absolutely appalling. I live in Blackhurst Lane, and at the end we have a reservoir. We have about 4 or 5 tankers every day piling up, and this has been for weeks and weeks, to load water into the reservoir. The pressure keeps dropping, the water's come through brown, a bit sludgy on occasions. Yesterday we had absolutely no water at all. I don't know how the elderly are coping with this in the slightest.
Miserable, isn't it? Absolutely miserable.
Really awful for them. But we have had a statement from South East Water's incident manager, Matthew Dean. They have apologised. Who said, "We're very sorry to our customers across Kent and Sussex who continue to experience issues with their drinking water supply, including no water, intermittent supply interruptions or low pressure." Around 25,000, it's a huge amount still, customers in Kent and Sussex remain affected by no water or intermittent supplies following the recent cold weather and subsequent breakout of leaks and bursts across Kent and Sussex, which has resulted in our drinking water storage tanks running very low. Drinking water to the 16,500 properties in East Grinstead will begin to be restored today, with full supplies expected to be restored tomorrow afternoon. But senior management very much under pressure. MPs are calling for the chief executive to go.
OK, Amelia, thank you. Well, last night I did offer an invitation to the boss of South East Water, he's David Hinton, to come on the programme and explain to customers and MPs what he is doing to fix the current issue and the wider South East Water network, described by the water regulator as the worst performing in the country. That invitation is still open, Mr Hinton. We are ready to talk when you are. Now, court documents have shown the BBC is set to take legal steps to have a $10 billion defamation lawsuit from Donald Trump dismissed. Now, the lawsuit relates, you may remember, to a Panorama programme that spliced together 2 clips from a speech that the president gave on the day his supporters stormed the US Capitol building on the 6th of January 2021. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has this next report.
We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion.
After President Trump's eye-watering threat on Air Force One, this is how the BBC has fought back. The corporation has always said it intended to robustly defend their journalism. These are the court documents it's now filed in its motion to dismiss the case. Trump's lawsuit stemmed from this speech.
Right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And how an episode of Panorama spliced together 2 sections 50 minutes apart, giving the impression the US president had encouraged his supporters to storm the Capitol building in 2021. The fallout from this saga led to the resignations of both the BBC Director General Tim Davie and his head of news. At the heart of the corporation's argument, in its defence, is where the case has been filed, Florida, which, for a British broadcaster, has never made much sense.
In here, the corporation says it plans to argue it, of course, didn't create, produce or broadcast the documentary in Florida. And this is an important bit. Here on page 11, they point out that the link that Trump's own legal team has provided shows that the Panorama episode in question simply couldn't be watched by viewers in the US unless they had a VPN, pointing out that viewers in America would be locked out if they tried to watch that way, and that the documentary wasn't actually available to watch via their US streaming service, BritBox.
On top of that, the documents claim the president has failed to plausibly allege the BBC published the documentary with actual malice, which Trump's team are required to do when filing for defamation in the States.
What President Trump is wanting is the BBC to spend a great deal of time and money disclosing documents going back a decade, all the filmed interviews, all the filmed stories about Donald Trump. The BBC says, no, let's move on to the next stage, which is our attempt to have this case thrown out. We've got until the middle of March to file our next part of the claim. We will do so. We don't want this case to come to court.
Regardless of whether President Trump succeeds or fails, the result is the same. His critics claim it's more about exerting pressure, using litigation as a form of leverage, a high-profile warning shot to those who are critical. But for a public service broadcaster ultimately answerable to taxpayers, the prolonged uncertainty and significant legal costs hurt all the more. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Still to come on the UK tonight, the Home Office says it has carried out a record number of arrests and raids of illegal workers in the last 18 months. Now, the Home Office says it has carried out a record number of arrests and raids on illegal workers over the past 18 months. Figures show a 77% rise in the number of raids since the government came in. Our Home editor Jason Farrell joined an immigration raid today and sent this report.
We're out with South London's immigration enforcement team. Its role to arrest illegal workers. With us is the immigration minister.
We're on our way to a car wash in Lewisham. It's a business that has previously employed illegal workers, and the team has intelligence that they're doing it again.
But on arrival, it's raining, there's no car washing, and just 2 employees sit in the dry.
What nationality are you, sir?
Romanian.
Romanian. You're both Romanian?
Yeah.
And both have legitimate employment status. The boss here says they've learned their lesson after being fined a few years ago.
If it was the 30 grand you get fined?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And have you had any illegal workers here since then?
No.
No?
No.
Right.
I don't want to be racking up the fine list. We're fully legit in here, so you're always welcome to come have a look, guys.
Next stop, a nail bar where it's suspected Chinese women are employed illegally. Officers speak with the two women through interpreters on the end of the phone.
If she does have a photo,
and, after checking Home Office records, establish they are illegal.
Ultimately, what we're seeking to do is remove people from the UK that are not entitled to be here and are not entitled to work in the UK. Sometimes we're able to do that very quickly. Other times we need to make sure that we put people on bail, keep them in contact with us so that we can help them and support them through any application process to remove them from the UK.
Arrests have increased by 83% in the 18 months since Labour came to power, but they don't all lead to removal. The two women here were arrested but allowed to leave on immigration bail.
what happens to those people in the meantime when they're on immigration bail?
Yeah, and they have to report in, so we've got that closer control of these people. There's also the process that they've got to go through. And look, generally at the Home Office, when we came in, that whole processing in the system had ground to a halt. That backlog's down. We've reduced those cases by 39%, so we've got to keep going at this. There's still a long way to go, but today is an important demonstration of how seriously we're taking this.
There have been 12,300 arrests for illegal working since this government came to power. Around 15% of those have been removed from the country, which means a lot of them remain on what's called immigration bail. And that means that the authorities are keeping closer tabs on them whilst they're being processed. They could also face a fine for illegal working, but the bigger financial penalties are for the people who employ them.
The Home Office has released videos of arrests across the country, but from our experience, intelligence isn't always accurate. Sometimes premises are closed. We only got 2 arrests. People want to see this, but it is a laborious process. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, Jason's here in the studio with me now. And Jason, these kind of surprise raids aren't new, are they? But I guess what is new is the context in which they're happening, these record figures, this real public scrutiny the government are under. And we hear about the figures going up, but we don't necessarily see the action and the results the government say they're putting out there. Is this evidence of that in a way for them?
I know people want to see this. I caveat that. Actually, there are some people who don't want to see this. There were actually one campaigner who came in whilst we were in the garage and telling people what their rights were and actually sent a message round to other people saying that they're out, warning people. So there are people who are supportive of migrants and think that this inflames anger against migrants. But I think Mike Tapp, especially, MP for Dover, Immigration Minister, he knows that most people on the doorstep are talking about immigration. And
first question is, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? And of course, last year, 41,000 people coming over on small boats. It's a second highest figure since records began. And the government knows that it's got to do things. And one of them is to kind of put it out there, and they've got this on their social media feeds, all these raids that they're doing, and they have increased the number of arrests. They have increased by about 75% the number of raids, and they are getting about 15% so far of those people deported. But there is a backlog. So a lot of these people end up essentially in the same status, waiting to see if they're going to be processed or not. And that's the problem. They sit in this backlog. And it is important, they feel, because it is a pull factor that people feel that they can get jobs on the black market here in the UK.
Yeah, and the government want to be seen to be doing something about it. Let's talk about digital IDs, because they are back on the table again, and this all ties in to this story, doesn't it?
I mean, this is one of the extraordinary things about today. I went on a raid with Mike Tapp, and at that point, he was talking to one of the garage owners about digital IDs and how the government are bringing them in. This was today, he was telling them, and this evening we understand that the government are actually U-turning on that, and they are not going to be mandatory. that you can now, it was going to come in by the end of Parliament. In fact, I quote you, Keir Starmer said, "You will not be able to work in the UK if you don't have a digital ID." Simple as that. That is not the case. The case now is that you can, use a visa, you can use your passport, your electronic visa. Those will still be valid. There'll still have to be mandatory checks. But the whole idea, and as Mike Tack was explaining this morning to one of the employers, these digital IDs will make things easier for you. It will avoid fraud, that sort of thing. And the opposition parties have said it's too expensive, spend more money on policing, people don't want digital IDs. And they appear to have U-turned on that. And the Lib Dems even say that Number 10 must have motion sickness, as they put it, from the number of U-turns that they're going through. So on the day that we've been out on a raid with the Home Office, we also hear that they're reining back on one of the key policies that they're putting forward to help employers stop this kind of thing happening.
I mean, it's such a confusing picture. I mean, Jason, you're in amongst it day to day, following all these developments. Is it as confusing as it seems to people who are watching the news right now? All these U-turns and everything that's happening, numbers going up,
Yeah, look, I think the bottom line is they know that they've got to deal with this.
Yeah.
They know that there's an enforcement layer to it. There's also the whole idea of putting out messages around it's easier to deport people, it's harder to get residency here, it's harder to seek asylum. So they're trying to put out a consistent message, but I have to say these kind of changes on policy that seem to be core policies do send out a rather confusing message.
Yeah, OK, all right, Jason, thank you. Jason Farrell, he's been out on one of those illegal immigration raids today. Thank you so much, Jason, thank you. Right, so to come on the programme, changes at Manchester United. Michael Carrick has become the club's interim head coach. We'll have all the details. And former Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp could be a potential candidate for Real Madrid this summer.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of VSL.
Welcome to the DHL Sports Hub on Sky News. Coming up, an admission from Mikel Arteta after he takes a step closer to what would be Arsenal's first trophy under him in 6 years in the FA Cup. And could this be a sign of things to come for Arina Sabalenka at the Australian Open? We will hear from the women's world #1 in tennis after her latest tournament success in Brisbane. But we start with Formula One, whose chief executive, Stefano Domenicali, has told Lando Norris to keep smiling as he prepares to defend a world title for the first time in 2026. The former Ferrari team principal has been reflecting on where the sport sits as it moves into a new era of smaller, more sustainable cars, and thinks it goes into it in good health after a thrilling championship finale last year.
I think it has been amazing. An amazing season because we were able to arrive to the last race, you know, with 3 drivers competing. And what has been incredible, and you know far better than me, it has been an evolution because summer break, the champions is already finished. Oscar is the winner. October, we have Lando on the title that is winning. And middle of November, Max will definitely crash in terms of winning. And for being here and seeing that they are all of them fighting for a title is just amazing. And I have to say more than that, the season has been phenomenal because we have seen a growth of our sport. We have seen new fans coming in our world. We have seen a lot of interest from a lot of commercial partners understanding the value of our proposition. So I think that we should be all very proud.
Lando Norris, what kind of figurehead as world champion would Lando Norris be, particularly amongst the young generation?
Very positive, younger, energetic, you know, with his personality that is different from the others. I always said to him, keep smiling. Keep smiling. You need to have positive energy. You know, sometimes, you know, they are young, so they are doing an incredible job. They are a role model for a lot of people. So they need to remember that they are a unique talent. But I always tell to him, so no secret, keep smiling.
What about the new team Cadillac? What's a good start for them?
Well, first of all, I think that they are really pushing very hard to be, you know, with the right element in this big game. This is a game for big boy. And you cannot consider that is an easy stuff. So if you're able to have personality, would be important. The effect that we're going to see already in the American market is big. For example, they are launching a new livery during the Super Bowl. As you know, in US, that's big. So it will be important.
On to boxing, and Anthony Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn says he does expect the former heavyweight world champion to fight again, but won't put a timescale on his return to the ring. Joshua was injured in a car crash in Nigeria last month that killed 2 of his close friends who were also part of his coaching team.
Personally, knowing AJ, after he's grieved, I believe he will want to get back to boxing. If he never fought again, you could never ever blame him. Do you know what I mean? And the only thing that can't even help, but the only thing will make the mind clearer is time. And he'll be given all the time. There's not like we talk about the IBF and things like that. We have no belts. We don't have to do anything. We could not fight for 2 years or ever again. Do you know what I mean? And when things like this happen, it's not about boxing, it's not about business. It's just about you, the families of those 2 guys, you know, and just, like I said, time to grieve and come to terms with a tragic incident.
Now, could this be an ominous sign of things to come ahead of the first tennis Grand Slam of the year later this month? The 2-time women's champion in Melbourne, Aryna Sabalenka, already has her first title of 2026 after a 6-4, 6-3 win over Marta Kostyuk in Brisbane. The world #1 needed 1 hour and 17 minutes to retain the trophy she won 12 months ago as she went through the whole tournament without dropping a set. Sabalenka's now up to 22 career titles, but as she eyes what would be her 5th slam success, it seems she's got something else in her sights too.
Thank you, my team, for handling me. I mean, I'm really the toughest one to handle, and you guys are the toughest people in the world if you can handle me. So, thank you guys, I love you, and thank you to my boyfriend. Hopefully soon I'll call you somehow else, right? Let's just put an extra pressure, right? Thank you everyone. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Mikel Arteta accepts he'll be judged on how many trophies he wins this season after just 1 in 6 years at Arsenal so far. The Premier League leaders are into the 4th round of the FA Cup, the only silverware they've won under him during the COVID lockdown in 2020 after Sunday's 4-1 win at Portsmouth. Arteta's side are also top of the Champions League and into the EFL Cup semis, and he knows there's a need to deliver.
At the end, I think we have to get judged, and we get judged for what we do today. And last week is not important, and we will get judged what we are able to do at the end of the season. One thing are the trophies for our football clubs, and then many other things that you have to do in a football club, especially in the situation we are in. But no, I don't expect that. I'm really happy where I am with the people that I will work with, and hopefully at least they know that we give our very best to try to win as much as possible.
Given you lifted that trophy, basically, then to say, how much does that make you want to lift a trophy?
Yeah, and the big ones as well. We won that one for sure, and the big ones, and that's what we are chasing. That's what the purpose of this team.
It looks like Manchester United's wait for another trophy will carry on into next year after they were knocked out in a 2-1 defeat to Brighton. Darren Fletcher was in interim charge of the Old Trafford side for that match, which leaves them with only 40 games to play this season. With the club 7th in the Premier League and not playing in Europe, Fletcher's warned against allowing the campaign to ebb away.
There's still a Champions League place to fight for, and I still think that can be achieved this season. It's probably not what fans want to hear about Manchester United, because you'll be winning cups and challenging for the Premier League. But probably the objective this season, with the quality we've got and the league positions and how tight it is, they've still got a lot of league games left that they can achieve that. So that should be all their focus and energy is going into, improving as a team, improving quickly, and don't waste the season. And I think that would be the challenge that I would set. That's the challenge that probably the players feel like they need to achieve this year. And anything other than that is just noise, really. That's what all their energy and focus has got to go into.
The most remarkable result in the 3rd round saw 6th-tier Macclesfield pull off what statistically goes down as the biggest shock in FA Cup history after they beat the holders Crystal Palace 2-1. There are 117 places between the two in the Football League pyramid, and it led to these ecstatic celebrations afterwards. The club was only founded in late 2020 after Macclesfield Town were liquidated, with owner Rob Smethurst buying the former team's assets on a property website.
We put Macclesfield on the map, and when I bought it 5 years ago, I bought it off Rightmove. You know, it was a bit of fun. I never thought that we'd be, you know, beating Crystal Palace, and, you know, super proud of the players and the fans and the community that supported me all this way.
So, just tell me about your involvement with the club.
Well, as an owner of a club, I mean, you know, I created it from nothing. Like I said, I bought it off Rightmove, and you know, I'm working every day with the staff and everything to try and make this club a better thing. But like I said, it's not about me, it's about the community, it's about the staff, and it's also about the fan base. That's what it's all about. And to put Macclesfield on the map tonight, I could not be prouder. As a Macclesfield lad, this is what Macclesfield is.
I'm still pinching myself. It's like, I've got goosebumps right now, just even thinking about it.
Unbelievable. You know, Macclesfield Football Club, where it's come from, everybody in the club needs a lot of credit, dude.
Honestly, I can't put it into words. Like, what an amazing day it's been for the club and for us personally as well. Like, it's an experience that we'll never forget. We made history, haven't we?
For the club, everything that we've gone through, watching my grandson play, which is Damani Bella, fantastic.
It's just been a fantastic day, full of emotions, but hey-ho, come on the Stiltman.
You can't make it up. You cannot make it up.
This program is delivered by DHL, the official logistics partner of VSL.